Today's episode is inspired by something that recently happened in my coaching membership. Now, if you didn't already know, I have a coaching membership. It's called The Worthy Collective. We're currently closed for enrollment, but we'll be opening up soon. So if you want to be notified when we open up, you can go to iamworthy.co/waitlist and we'll add you to the waitlist and let you know. But it was something that happened in the coaching membership. So for context, every single month we pick a topic. I pick a topic and I coach on that topic. We have 2 coaching calls every single month. And in this particular incident, I had done my coaching and then I'd opened it up for questions from the membership. Now, the membership is a really diverse group of women with a few men thrown in. And it is such a phenomenal group, such a phenomenal and inspiring group of people. And so I opened it up for questions. And I could see, obviously, we're on Zoom, I could see all the people in the room. And I could see that there was one person in particular who's an amazing member in our group who looked like she had a question, but was being hesitant about raising her hand to ask the question. And so, because I could see that, I called her out and I was like, "Hey, do you have a question?" To which she responded, "I do have a question, but I was waiting for everybody else to ask their questions before I ask mine." Now, this reminded me of something that had happened to me when I was at university. As some of you may know, when I was 40, I went back to school, which was insane. Yes, who goes back to school at 40? I did. I went back to school when I was 40. And this incident reminded me of something that happened in one of my lectures. And I actually shared it with our membership. And I thought that I would share it with you because I really think that it's something that us, especially as women, often do, is apologize for ourselves. And so what had happened in my case was, as I said, I was at school. And for context as well, I was at university and feeling like a fraud, feeling imposter syndrome. I felt like I didn't really belong. I wasn't sure I belonged. As a 40-year-old going back to school after like having been out of school for so long. And it was also a master's program, a highly specialized master's program. And admission, it's so hard to get in. They admit very few people into the program. It's highly competitive. And all of the people who were in my class had all been, as you know, or you may not know, that I went to journalism school. I went to Columbia Journalism School to study documentary filmmaking and journalism. And so all of the people who were in my class had all been journalists at stations, at networks. They had won awards. I was there. I didn't even know, quite honestly, how to use a camera on manual mode. So I felt completely like a fish out of water. And I think that showed to this particular professor. But he was somebody I really loved. His name was Professor David Klatell. And unfortunately, Professor Klatell passed away about 5 years ago. But he's someone who had such a profound impact on me and on my experience at being at Columbia Journalism School. And Professor Klatell was watching, I guess, more than I thought he was. I really loved his classes. He had the most wicked sense of humor, and he'd make even the most dry topic that he'd be teaching about, like teaching us about how the New York subway system worked. He'd just make it so interesting with all these stories. So I really loved his classes and looked forward to his classes. And I would participate, like when he asked a question, I'd respond, I'd react, all of those things. And in this one particular class, he asked a question. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be the only one, looking around the room and thinking, I don't want to be the one who's always responding to his questions. I don't want to be the one who's seen as teacher's pet. And so everybody else kind of sort of just looked down and wasn't really like engaging with him. And I think he could see that I wanted to respond. And so he called on me and he's like, "Sandra, what do you have to say?" And I said, kind of sort of exactly the same thing that the lady in my membership said to me. I said, "Well, I want to respond, but I want to give everybody else a chance." And he said to me in that moment, he said, "Does everybody else have a tongue and can they speak?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Can everybody else raise their hands if they have something to say?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, So, what makes you think that you need to police for them when they can speak or when they cannot speak? If they want to speak, they'll raise their hand and they'll speak. And I remember kind of sinking into my chair and responding to what he'd said. And then at the end of class, he called me. He said, "I want to see you in my office." Oh, you didn't want to go to Professor Klatell's office. He was, if I had to describe him, he was like the amazing grandpa, but who could also really call you on your BS. And so I knew if he was calling me to his office, he was about to give me some home truths. So what did I do? I'd go up to his office. And he said something that was so profound to me that has stayed with me. And it's something that I've carried with me as I've gone forward. He said, "Never ever apologize for showing up fully as yourself. Never apologize and make yourself small to make other people feel uncomfortable." Whoa, that was some home truth. And he said to me, "Never apologize for taking up space." And something else, as I said, he obviously had sensed that I was feeling like an imposter, that I was feeling like I didn't belong. And he said something else to me that was really profound. He said, "Anytime you find yourself in a room that you want to be in, know that you belong there. It doesn't matter how you got in the room. The fact that you are in the room means you belong." And it's something that I had observed as well in my professional career as a management consultant. As some of you know, before I was an entrepreneur, I was a management consultant working with global companies. And one of the things that I would observe all the time was I would walk into meetings or I would be in brainstorming sessions, and generally the women would kind of hold themselves back, or they would apologize in a way for their presence, apologize for having brilliant ideas. What was so interesting was oftentimes they wouldn't speak. We'd be in meetings, and the men, a lot of men, no disrespect to guys, the men had no issues with speaking up, even if their idea was, quite frankly, a bunch of nonsense. But they had no problem standing up and confidently speaking about their idea and how their idea was the best thing since sliced bread. And then I'd see women, and when they eventually allowed themselves timidly to raise their hand and to speak up, they would almost be apologetic for speaking. They would almost be apologetic when they had an idea. And then you'd always see the self-doubt when people said, "Oh, that's a great idea." You could almost see the wheels turning in their head, them saying to themselves, "Is it really a great idea?" And inevitably, in so many scenarios, someone else, a guy typically, would latch onto the idea and run with it. And then all of a sudden, that person's the one who got the credit. And so I want to remind you, wherever you are in your life, whatever it is that you're going into, the words that Professor Klatell shared with me, that if you are in a room that you want to be in, you belong there. You deserve to be there. Because oftentimes we will negate or minimize why we're there. So many times I've said to myself, "Oh, I think they only invited me here because, oh, I'm a woman." Or I think they only invited me in because I'm a minority. Or they only invited, and I would make up all of these excuses for the only reason I've been allowed in this room. But what I want this to be is your permission to take up space in the world. Take up space unapologetically. If you are in a room, know that you deserve to be in that room. The fact that you are in that room means you belong there. Stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. And may you always, as I say at the end of every episode, remember that you are worthy. You are worthy to be in that room. You are worthy to take up space. And to remember that maybe sometimes the reason we don't take up space is because we think we'll be too much. We'll be seen as being too much. And maybe a different perspective to take is when someone tells you that you are too much, too loud, too bold, too bright, too whatever. It's because you're showing them, you are a mirror to them of how they are shrinking themselves. Maybe you are showing them by you being, in their words, too much, that they are too little. They are too little in standing up in their authenticity, standing up for who they want to be. And so remember, you are worthy to be, to do, to have anything that your heart desires.